James Carter grew up in a small town in Texas where the hot desert wind blew over arid fields and the horizon seemed to stretch forever. The son of a mechanic and an elementary school teacher, James learned the value of hard work and perseverance. From an early age, his childhood was simple but filled with love and lessons that would shape his character. While other boys dreamed of becoming football stars or famous singers, James had a different dream: to serve his country. From the age of 12, he was captivated by the stories his grandfather, a Vietnam War veteran, told about bravery, camaraderie, and sacrifice. Those stories, though filled with pain and loss, ignited in James a deep desire to be part of something greater than himself. He saw the military uniform not just as clothing, but as a symbol of honor and duty. In high school, James was known for his discipline and determination. He excelled in sports, especially track and field, where his endurance and physical strength stood out. But it was in the school's Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps, JROTC program, that he truly shined. There, he learned the basics of leadership, strategy, and teamwork, skills that would later prove crucial in his life. At 18, right after graduating high school, James enlisted in the United States Army. His family, though proud, felt a knot in their throats as they watched him leave. His mother, in particular, struggled to hold back tears as she helped pack his bags. "You've always been strong, James," she said, holding his hands, "but promise me you'll come back to us." He smiled, trying to convey a confidence he didn't fully feel. "I promise, Mom." Basic training was a trial by fire. Endless days of physical drills, short nights of sleep, and the constant pressure to push beyond his limits shaped James in ways he never imagined. He learned to endure pain, hunger, and exhaustion, but he also discovered an inner strength he didn't know he had. It was during this time that he formed friendships that would last a lifetime, including one with Mike Thompson, a jovial guy from Alabama who would become his brother in arms. When James finally received his first overseas assignment, he felt a mix of excitement and fear. He was about to face the unknown, but he was also fulfilling the dream he had nurtured for so long. Little did he know that this journey would take him to places far darker than he could have ever imagined. Afghanistan was a shock to James. The scorching desert heat, the smell of dust and gunpowder, and the constant hum of helicopters in the sky created a scene that felt like it was straight out of an action movie. But there was nothing glamorous about this reality. Every day was a fight for survival, and every night brought the fear of a surprise attack. James and his unit were assigned to a remote region where insurgent activity was particularly high. They patrolled villages, protected civilians, and tried to earn the trust of locals, but distrust was mutual. Every face they encountered could hide an enemy, and every corner could conceal a trap. It was during one of these patrols that James experienced the most traumatic moment of his life. He and Mike Thompson were leading a group of soldiers down a dirt road when a deafening explosion shook the ground. A hidden roadside bomb had been detonated. James was thrown into the air, and when he landed, he felt a sharp pain in his right leg. The sound of gunfire echoed in the distance, but everything seemed distant, as if he were underwater. "James! James, are you okay?" Mike's voice was urgent, but James could barely respond. He looked down and saw blood pouring from his leg. The world around him seemed to spin, and he fought to stay conscious. Mike and other soldiers dragged him to safety as the firefight continued. James could barely think, but one thing was clear. He didn't want to die there. The evacuation was a nightmare. James was flown by helicopter to a field hospital, where surgeons fought to save his leg. He underwent multiple surgeries and weeks of recovery, but the physical scars were just the beginning. The real challenge was the invisible scars, the ones no one could see, but that hurt more than any wound. When James finally returned to the United States, he was no longer the same man who had left. The war had changed him in ways he couldn't yet understand. He had recurring nightmares, reliving the explosion and the faces of those who didn't make it. The sound of fireworks made him dive to the ground, seeking cover. And worst of all was the emptiness, as if a part of him had been left behind on the battlefield. The diagnosis came soon after his return: post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and depression. James was referred to therapy, but he resisted. "I don't need help," he said, trying to convince himself. "I'm strong. I can handle this on my own." But the truth was, he was drowning, and every day was a battle to keep his head above water. During this time, James began to isolate himself. He avoided friends and family, preferring the solitude of his empty apartment. Alcohol became his constant companion, a way to numb the pain, even if only temporarily. He knew he was in a downward spiral, but he couldn't see a way out. Mike's call echoed in James's mind for days. He knew his friend was right, but the idea of asking for help felt unbearable. "I don't want to be a burden to anyone," he thought, holding an empty whiskey bottle. The pain was constant, and the feeling of despair only grew. He no longer saw a reason to go on. It was on a particularly dark night that James hit rock bottom. He was alone in his apartment, surrounded by empty bottles and painful memories. The silence was deafening, and the darkness seemed to suffocate him. He picked up an old photo of his unit in Afghanistan and looked at the smiling faces of his new friends. Some of them were no longer alive, and he wondered why he still was. With trembling hands, James grabbed a gun he had kept since his return. He held it for a moment, feeling the cold weight of the metal in his hands. "Maybe this is the only way to end it," he thought, tears streaming down his face. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, preparing for the inevitable. But then, something happened. The sound of a text message made him jump. It was Sarah. "James, I know you're hurting, but please don't give up. I love you, and we'll get through this together." The message was like a ray of light in the darkness. James looked at the gun in his hands, and then at the photo of his unit. He couldn't give up. Not like this. The next day, James decided to seek help. He called Mike, who immediately took him to a veterans support center. There he met Dr. Emily Torres, a therapist specializing in PTSD and combat trauma. At first, James was resistant. "I don't think this will help," he said, crossing his arms, but Dr. Torres was patient. "You don't have to believe me yet," she replied. "You just have to give it a chance." The early sessions were tough. James struggled to open up, and the painful memories felt like open wounds. But gradually, he began to feel more comfortable. Dr. Torres helped him understand that his emotions were valid and that he wasn't alone. She taught him techniques to manage anxiety and nightmares and encouraged him to reconnect with his family and friends. Mike was also a crucial support. He visited James regularly, taking him on walks and having honest conversations. "We've been through hell together, brother," Mike said on one occasion, "and we'll get through this together too." Those words touched James in a way he hadn't expected. He began to realize that his struggle wasn't his alone. It belonged to everyone who loved him. Slowly, James began to see a light at the end of the tunnel. He still had bad days, but now he knew he didn't have to face them alone. Therapy, Mike's support, and reconciliation with Sarah were crucial steps in his healing journey. He wasn't fully healed, but he was on the right path. It was during one of the veterans support group meetings that James met a young soldier named Daniel, who had recently returned from Afghanistan. Daniel was struggling with PTSD and addiction to painkillers, and his story felt all too familiar. "I don't know what to do," Daniel confessed, tears in his eyes. "I feel so lost, like no one understands what I'm going through." James looked at him and saw a reflection of himself from years ago. In that moment, he realized he could make a difference in someone's life. That's how the idea for Soldiers of Hope was born. James decided to create a program that offered comprehensive support to veterans, including therapy, job training, and social reintegration activities. He wanted it to be a place where veterans could feel understood and valued, free from stigma and isolation. With the help of Mike, Sarah, and Dr. Torres, James began to put his plan into action. They secured a space at a local community center and started spreading the word. At first, it was hard to convince veterans to join. Many of them, like James, in the past, were reluctant to ask for help. But gradually, stories of transformation began to spread and more people showed up. Soldiers of Hope offered a variety of services. There were group therapy sessions where veterans could share their experiences and support one another. There were also job training workshops to help participants develop skills for the workforce. And perhaps most importantly, there were recreational activities like fishing, camping, and sports, which helped rebuild confidence and a sense of community. James was personally involved in every aspect of the program. He led therapy sessions, sharing his own story of struggle and triumph. He also organized community events where veterans could connect with locals and break down barriers of distrust. "We're not just soldiers," he would say. "We're parents, children, friends. We're part of this community." The impact of Soldiers of Hope was profound. Daniel, the young soldier who had inspired James, was one of the first to benefit. With the program's support, he overcame his addiction and found a stable job. "I don't know where I'd be without James and Soldiers of Hope," he said in a local interview. "They saved me." Other veterans began sharing their stories of transformation too. There was John, who discovered a passion for woodworking and now taught workshops for other veterans. There was Maria, who overcame social anxiety and now led support groups. Each story was a testament to the power of hope and resilience. The program's success caught the media's attention. James was invited to TV and radio shows, where he shared his vision and inspired other communities to create similar initiatives. "We can't forget our veterans," he said. "They gave everything for us, and now it's our turn to help them." But for James, the greatest reward was seeing the transformation in the lives of those he helped. Every smile, every story of triumph, was a reminder that he had found his purpose. He was no longer a broken man. He was a leader, a mentor, a beacon of hope. Years passed since James Carter founded Soldiers of Hope, but his influence only grew. The program expanded to all 50 states, helping thousands of veterans rebuild their lives. James, now a nationally recognized figure, continued to travel the country, sharing his story and inspiring others to never give up. He also wrote a book, From the Battlefield to Hope, which became a bestseller and was translated into multiple languages. The book detailed his personal journey and offered practical advice for those facing similar challenges. "I want people to know that pain isn't the end," he wrote. "It's just the beginning of a new story." Sarah and James married in an intimate ceremony, surrounded by friends and family. Mike was the best man, and his speech about friendship and resilience moved everyone to tears. "James taught me that true strength isn't about never falling," he said, raising his glass in a toast. "It's about always getting back up." Today, James lives a fulfilling life, but he never forgets his roots. He still visits the community center where it all began, talking to new veterans and listening to their stories. For him, every person he helps is a reminder that life's purpose isn't about avoiding pain, but about transforming it into something greater. If James Carter's story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new videos. Leave a comment below telling us what inspired you most about James's journey. Was it his resilience, his ability to help others, or the way he turned pain into hope? We'd love to hear your thoughts, and if you think this story could inspire someone, like and share this video. Together, we can spread messages of hope and resilience to the world. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.